Long ago, in a valley wrapped between blue mountains, there was a village called Briar Hollow, and in the middle of that village stood a strange orchard, where the trees did not grow ordinary fruit. They grew clear glass, apples that shone in the sun and rang softly when the wind touched them. The villagers said the orchard was a gift from the sky, and as long as the apples sang, the river would keep flowing and the fields would stay green. Every child in Briar Hollow grew up hearing the same warning: never cut a glass apple before the first autumn bell, and never go near the old stone tower at the edge of the orchard after dark. Most people obeyed, but Mara never liked rules that had no reason. She was a young glassmaker with careful hands and a brave heart, and after her father died, she helped her mother repair lanterns, cups, and windows for the whole village. Mara loved the orchard because she had spent her childhood there, listening to the apples chime like tiny bells. She also loved the quiet nights, when the moonlight turned the glass fruit into little stars. One evening, after a hard day of work, Mara went to the orchard to collect broken branches after a storm. The sky was still dark and the wind smelled of rain. As she walked between the trees, she heard a soft sound that was not the wind and not the birds. It was music, low and sad, coming from the old tower. Mara stopped. The tower had been empty for as long as anyone could remember. The music came again, and this time it sounded like someone was crying while trying not to be heard. Mara followed the sound until she found a young man lying near the tower door. His clothes were torn, his dark hair was wet with rain, and one of his hands held a silver flute. He looked no older than 20, but there was something strange about him. His skin was cold as river stone, and on his wrist was a mark shaped like a spiral cloud. Mara knelt beside him and touched his shoulder. "Can you hear me?" she asked softly. The young man opened his eyes. They were the color of storm clouds before rain. He looked at her with fear and confusion. "Where am I?" he whispered. "In Briar Hollow," Mara said. "Who are you?" He tried to sit up, but he winced in pain. "I do not know," he answered. "I remember music. I remember falling." "Then nothing," Mara frowned. "You do not know your own name?" He shook his head. "No." She looked at the silver flute in his hand. "Can you play that?" He stared at it as if seeing it for the first time. "I think so." Before she could ask more, thunder rolled across the valley, even though the sky was clear. The glass apples in the orchard began to tremble. Mara felt a chill run down her back. "You should come with me," she said. "You cannot stay here in the rain." The stranger hesitated, then gave a small nod. Mara helped him to his feet and led him to her home at the edge of the village. Her mother was already asleep, so Mara brought him into the kitchen and gave him warm soup and dry clothes. He sat by the fire, looking around the small room with quiet wonder. "You were very kind," he said. Mara smiled a little. "I am only practical. A sick stranger in the rain is bad luck if left outside." He almost smiled at that. "Then I am lucky you found me." Mara looked at him more closely. Even without a name, he had a gentle face and a sad kind of beauty that made her heart feel strange and warm. She told herself not to be foolish. He was only a lost traveler. Yet when he lifted the spoon with careful hands, she noticed that his fingers moved like a musician's. "You were playing the flute in the orchard," she said. "I heard you." He lowered his eyes. "Then the orchard hears me too." Mara laughed softly. "That is a strange thing to say." "I know," he replied. "But it feels true." The next morning, Mara took him to the village healer, who found no wound except a deep bruise on his shoulder and the strange cloud mark on his wrist. The healer said he would recover soon, but she also warned Mara to keep him away from the orchard. "The trees have been restless," the old woman said. "The apples are cracking, and the river is lower than it should be. Something is wrong." Mara glanced at the stranger. "Maybe he knows why." The healer gave her a sharp look. Or maybe he is the reason. Mara did not answer, but the stranger heard every word. Later that day, while Mara repaired lantern glass in her workshop, he sat beside her and watched the sunlight move through the colored panes. "Your village is beautiful," he said. "It feels old, like a song that has been sung for many years." Mara smiled. "That is because it has. My grandmother used to say the orchard was planted by a woman who caught a falling star and buried it in the soil." "Did she?" he asked. "No one knows. It is only a story." He touched the silver flute in his lap. "Stories are often the only way people remember the truth." Mara looked at him with interest. "You speak like a poet." "Perhaps I was one," he said quietly. "Or a fool." She laughed and he smiled for the first time. Over the next few days, the stranger stayed in Briar Hollow, and because he had no name, Mara began calling him Eniin, after a word her grandmother once used for a wind that came before rain. Anne liked the name, and soon the whole village used it too. He helped Mara carry glass, repair broken windows, and gather herbs by the river. He was gentle with children and patient with old people. He never complained, even when the villagers stared at him with suspicion. Mara noticed that whenever he passed the orchard, the glass apples rang more clearly, as if they recognized him. One afternoon, while they worked together in the orchard, Anna stopped beside a tree with cracked fruit. He lifted his hand, and the apples gave a soft, trembling sound. "They are afraid," he whispered. Mara frowned. "Afraid of what?" Anne closed his eyes. "Of being forgotten." Mara looked at him in surprise. "How do you know that?" He opened his eyes again, and for a moment they seemed brighter, almost silver. "I can hear things others cannot." Before she could ask more, the village mayor arrived with 2 guards. Mayor Holden was a heavy man with a red face and a voice that always sounded angry, even when he was trying to be kind. He looked at Anne with open dislike. "So this is the stranger," he said. "The one Mara brought home." Mara stood straight. "He was injured, and now he is healed enough to leave," Holden replied. "The village does not need trouble." Anne bowed his head politely. "If I have caused trouble, I will go." Mara turned to the mayor. "He has done nothing wrong." Holden's eyes narrowed. "The orchard is failing. The river is low, and now a stranger appears from nowhere. I do not trust coincidences." He pointed toward the tower. "No one goes near that place. Do you understand?" Mara felt anger rise in her chest. "Why?" The mayor's face tightened. "Because some doors should stay closed." Then he walked away with his guards, leaving Mara and Anne in silence. That night, Mara could not sleep. She kept thinking about the cracked apples, the strange music, and the mayor's fear. Near midnight, she heard a soft flute melody outside her window. She opened the door and found Aing standing under the moonlight. "I could not rest," he said. "The orchard is calling me." Mara wrapped a shawl around her shoulders. "Then let us go." They walked together through the sleeping village and into the orchard. The glass apples glowed pale blue in the dark. At the center of the trees stood the old tower, tall and narrow, with a door covered in rusted iron rings. Arn touched the stone wall, and the flute in his hand began to hum. "I know this place," he whispered. "Or I think I do." Mara's heart beat faster. "What do you mean?" He pressed his palm against the door. "I dreamed of this tower before I woke in the rain. I dreamed of a sky full of broken stars and a woman singing to the wind." The door slowly opened by itself. Inside, they found a round room with a broken stone, harp in the middle, and walls covered in faded silver drawings. The drawings showed the orchard when it was young, the river shining bright, and people standing beneath the trees while a woman played music from the tower. Mara stepped closer to the harp. "This is the heart of the orchard," she whispered. Anne looked at the drawings with growing shock. "No," he said softly. "This is not only the heart of the orchard. It is a seal." Mara turned to him. "A seal for what?" Before he could answer, the floor shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. Outside, the glass apples began to ring wildly, one after another, until the whole orchard sounded like a storm of bells. Anne grabbed Mara's hand. "We must leave now." "Why?" she asked. He looked at her with fear in his eyes. "Because the thing under this tower is waking up." At that exact moment, a deep voice rose from beneath the stone floor, cold and ancient as winter. "At last," it said, "the singer has returned." Mara froze. Aaron's face went pale. The silver mark on his wrist began to glow. And from the darkness below the tower, something enormous started to breathe.